Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar,
Excused.
Baumgardner, Cook, Corum, Court, Crowder, Donovan, Binberg, Fields, Garcia, Gardner,
Excused.
Guzman, Hill, Holbert, John, Jones, Kagan, Kafalis, Kerr, Lambert, Lumberg, Marble, Martinez-Huminick, Merrifield, Moreno, Neville, Priola, Scott, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Tate, Todd, Williams, Williams,
Suzanne. Wrong Williams. Absent.
Zinzinger,
All right, let's go.
Mr. President.
Here. With 32 present, 1 absent, 2 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Fenberg, would you please come and lead us in the pledge?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the journal, Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the reading of the journal of Wednesday, March 14th be dispensed with and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You've heard the motion. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is adopted. Colleagues, would you please join me in welcoming our former colleague, the Honorable Senator Suzanne Williams. Committee reports.
March 14, 2018, Committee on State Veterans, Military Affairs, African Service, and Marriage Committee following House Bill 1198 be as follows as submitted before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. March 14, 2018, Committee on State Veterans, Military Affairs, African Service, and Marriage Committee following House Bill 1127 be postponed indefinitely. March 14, 2018, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology has had in consideration had a hearing on the following appointments and recommendations of appointments to be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Members of the State Historical Society Board of Directors for a term expiring July 1st, 2020. Marco Antonio Barco, Denver, Colorado, reappointed. March 14, 2018, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, African Service, and Marriage Committee following Senate Bill 189 be postponed indefinitely.
Senate Services.
Correctly engrossed, Senate Bill 177, Senate Joint Resolution 8, correctly re-engrossed, Senate Bill 56, 116, 182, 184, correctly revised, House Bill 1130, correctly re-revised, House Bill 1012, 1103, 1137, 1138, 1139, 1158, and 1196, correctly enrolled, Senate Bill 73, 102, 111, 121, and 125.
Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by the good senator from Fort Collins.
Motion is to proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by Senator Kafalas. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and we will proceed out of order. Senator Kafalas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, colleagues. Today, I am pleased to welcome guests from the Women's Foundation of Colorado. They are here for Lobby and Advocacy Day. For those of you who may not know, the Women's Foundation of Colorado is a unique community foundation that creates more pathways to economic security for Colorado women and their families. It uses the power of community philanthropy and impact to help all women thrive, which builds a more prosperous state for us all. The Women's Foundation advocates to expand opportunities for women to pursue education, training, and employment, and to address root causes of poverty and promote economic security. Please join me in welcoming the Women's Foundation of Colorado to the Capitol today. They'll be in the old Supreme Court chambers until noon today, so if there's an opportunity, you may want to stop by and say hello. Thank you, colleagues. Would you join?
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for another moment of personal privilege by the good senator from El Paso County.
Motion is to proceed out of order for another moment of personal privilege by Senator Merrifield. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and we will proceed out of order. Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Colleagues, it's frustrating to me that probably many of you do not realize that this is Public School Week, officially. So I wanted to talk a little bit about public schools. Like Horace Mann said, the public school is the greatest discovery made by man. I happen to have lived my life centered around that philosophy, built around that premise, that public schools are the building blocks of democracy, that free public schools are available to every child in this country, regardless of their income, their ability, their need, English language proficiency, racial and ethnic identity. And these are the keystones of our foundation of American democracy. None of us, I would guess, in this room would be where we are without the opportunity in this country to have a free public education. Our public schools prepare our nation's young people, rich, poor, native, foreign-born, all abilities and disabilities, colors and religions, to contribute to our nation's society, economy, and civic life. All of our students deserve high-quality public schools that teach the whole child, providing enrichment and addressing social and emotional needs in addition to core academic subjects. Our constituents expect their elected leaders and their policymakers, regardless of party affiliation, to value this support and support this vision for a strong and inclusive public education. 90% of all American children attend and depend on public schools for their chance to succeed and achieve the American dream. Education policies that diminish the resources needed by traditional public schools to provide the safe and nurturing learning environment that all students deserve, that provides an education system offering fairness and opportunity for all children, should be opposed. As legislators, we should support public education in our community that is high quality, inclusive, and supported with resources that are adequate for its essential responsibility of helping all children achieve, to succeed and mature into good citizens who contribute to America's economic, social well-being, and the civic life of our democracy. We should reject policies that lead to separate and unequal educational opportunities for our students, or that privatize school operations and undermine local control and accountability for all of our public funded schools. Thank you to our public schools and our public educators for all that you do to make reaching the American dream possible for all our children. Thank you, Mr. President.
Third reading of bills, final passage. Please add Senators Gardner and Williams to the roll. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the sponsor's request, I move to lay over Senate Bill 123 until Thursday, March 22nd.
Motion is to lay over Senate Bill 123 till Thursday, March 22nd. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and that will lay over. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the titles to the remaining bills on the third reading of bills? Oh, this is not consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of the Senate Bill 177?
Senate Bill 177 by Senators Priola and Todd and Representative Bridges and Size concerning procedures when certain private schools cease operations.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have also not paid a fine yet this year, referring to you as the wrong title. With that, I move Senate Bill 177 on third reading and final passage.
I can find some other reason to fine you. Is there any discussion on Senate Bill 177? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 177. Are there any no votes? Senator Marble, Senator Hill, Senator Lundberg, Senator Lambert. With 30 ayes, 4 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 177 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Kafalas, Senator Scott, Senator Fields, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Kagan, Senator Merrifield, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Tate. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of the House Bill 1130.
House Bill 1130 by Representatives William and Arndt and Senator Gardner concerning increasing the availability of qualified personnel who are licensed in another state to teach in public schools.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1130 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of House Bill 1130. Are there any no votes? Senator Jones, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Moreno, Senator Merrifield. With 30 ayes, 4 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1130 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator John, Senator Cook, Senator Hill, Senator Neville, Senator Crowder, Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Marble, Senator Scott, Senator Priola, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Smallwood, Senator Tate, Senator Lambert, Senator Lundberg, Senator Garcia. Please add the President. Committee reports, Mr. Carpenter.
March 14, 2018, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of Mayor's Committee as following, House Bill 1029 be amended as follows as so amended, be referred to Committee on Appropriations with a favorable recommendation. March 14, 2018, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of Mayor's Committee as following, House Bill 1025 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. Recommendation be placed on the consent calendar.
General Order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar.
Motion before the body is for the Senate to resolve itself from the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the General Order second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself from the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the General Order second reading of bills consent calendar, and Senator Gardner will take the chair.
The microphone will be turned on.
Do that. The committee will come to order. Let me do that again. The Coat rule is not relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title of all the bills on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar?
Senate Bill 183 by Senator Tate and Representative Arndt Liston concerning authorizing agents of insurance to access the electronic system that ensures access for owner and lien holder information of a motor vehicle. Senate Bill 187 by Senators Marble and Tate concerning transferring marijuana fibrous waste for the purpose of producing industrial fiber products. Senate Bill 195 by Senator Moreno and Representative Rankin concerning a requirement that the money in the Healthcare Affordability and Sustainability Fee Cash Fund be appropriated annually rather than continuously appropriated. Senate Bill 119 by Senator Gardner concerning false imprisonment of a minor.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the 4 bills on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar. Senate Bill 183, Senate Bill 187, along with the committee report from Business, Labor, and Technology, Senate Bill 195, and Senate Bill 119, along with the Appropriations Committee report.
Is there any discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of the bills on the general orders. Is there any discussion on the committee reports? Seeing none, the committee reports are adopted. Any discussion on any of the bills? Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the committee reports, say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Committee reports are adopted. At this time, we are now back to the bills. Is there any discussion on the bills? Seeing none, the question before the body is the adoption of all of the bills on the second reading consent calendar. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, and the bills on the calendar are adopted. Now, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the body to rise and report. All of those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee will rise and report.
Senate will come back to order. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has had a number of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report of the Committee of the Whole?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole bills lead reports had on consideration the following tax bills being the second reading thereof makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 183, Senate Bill 187 is amended, Senate Bill 195, Senate Bill 119 is amended, past second read order and gross place on the calendar for their reading and final passage.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the adoption of the report.
Motion for the body is the adoption of the report to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 183, Senate Bill 187 is amended, Senate Bill 195, Senate Bill 119 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for final passage. General orders, second reading of bills. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
Motion before the body is for the Senate to resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the general orders, second reading of bills calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it. And the Senate will resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the general orders, second reading of bills calendar. Senator Gardner will take the chair.
The committee will come to order, and the court rule is now relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Bill 18-001?
Senate Bill 001 by Senator Baumgartner and Cook and Representative Buck. Concerning transportation infrastructure funding and in connection therewith requiring a transportation commission to submit a ballot question to the voters of the state at the November 2018 general election, which, if approved, would authorize the state with no increase in any taxes to issue additional transportation revenue anticipation notes for the purpose of addressing
Senator
critical
Cook.
priority transportation needs in the state by funding transportation projects which include no proceeds in investment earnings and no proceeds from state fiscal year spending limits, would repeal an existing requirement that the state treasury execute lease purchase agreements for the purpose of funding transportation projects and would require 10% of the state sales and use tax net revenue to be credited to the state highway fund for the purpose of repaying any notes issued and funding transportation projects.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I renew my motion to move Senate Bill 1 as amended and ask for an aye vote.
There is an amendment on the desk, L026. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read Amendment 026?
Amendment L026 to Senate Bill 1 by Senator Zenzinger, amend the Baumgartner and Cook floor amendment, Senate Bill 1 L008, page 3, strike lines 13 through 22.
Senator Zenzinger.
I withdraw my amendment. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on L026? Oh, I'm sorry. She was using her indoor voice, and I didn't hear her withdrawal. Is there another amendment on the desk? Oh, there are many of them. In this order? 15 first? Mr. Carpenter, would you please read Amendment L015?
Amendment L015 by Senator Zenzinger, Senate Bill 1, amend Printed Bill page 10, strike lines 7 through 27, page 11, strike lines 1 through 5, renumber succeeding 6 sections accordingly, page 11, lines 8 and 9, strike use of sales and use tax net revenue and substitute transfer and use of general fund revenue, use of page 11, strike lines 10 through...
Senator Kagan.
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw the amendment.
015 is withdrawn and not otherwise moved. Since it has another senator's name on it, it's not otherwise moved. So, Mr. Carpenter, please read Amendment L013.
Amendment L013 to Senate Bill 1 by Senator Donovan, amend Printed Bill page 10, line 19, after revenue, insert minus an amount of the net revenue equal to the difference between the total amount of general fund appropriations of the Department of Higher Education for the state fiscal year and the total amount of general fund appropriations of the Department
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I withdraw Amendment 13.
L013 has been withdrawn. Are there other amendments on the desk? Lots of them. Mr. Carpenter, please read Amendment L017.
Amendment L017, Senate Bill 1 by Senator Kerr, amend the Transportation Committee report dated January 23, 2018.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L017.
L017 has been moved to the amendment. Senator Kerr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yesterday we had a long debate on various aspects of Senate Bill 1 and various amendments were offered. Not all of them were heard because under the title concerning transportation infrastructure funding, it was determined that some of the amendments didn't fit under that. This amendment, L017, definitely fits under the title because it is about transportation infrastructure funding. And what L017 does is it ensures that a portion of the 10% diversion in Senate Bill 1 goes to all forms of transportation. And whether you are driving your car, you're taking a bus, you're riding a train, riding a bike, or walking, that there will be a commitment by this body to transportation funding infrastructure across the board. So you can go through all the details there, but let me just tell you that overall what this does is it reduces the diversion from 10% to 8.5%, meaning that 15% of the total diversion is going to a newly created multimodal fund. And this is making sure that as CDOT looks at the overall transportation infrastructure funding, that at least 15% of the money we're talking about is going to help make sure that everyone in Colorado is able to get where they are going and their goods and services get to where they are going and need to be going, regardless of what form of transportation that they are taking. As was discussed yesterday in Senate Bill 1 is that there's somewhere around $350 million that we're talking about here going in on an annual basis. This will make sure that approximately $52 million of that $350 million is going to, again, as I say, all forms of transportation. And it doesn't matter if you're driving the most expensive Hummer sold. It doesn't matter if you have to take the bus, RTD bus, in order to get to your job, that the infrastructure funding that supports your form of transportation will be a priority of this body. With that, I ask for the adoption of L017.
Thank you.
Senator Cook, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for Senatorial 5 so we can review the amendment since it's multi-page. Senatorial 5 so we can read the amendment.
The Senate will stand in recess. The committee will come back to order. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for a no vote on L017. It increases money for multimodal, pedestrian, sidewalk paths. There's money in there. 10% in the original bill goes to transit, and we feel that's enough. We need to fix our roads and bridges. So I'd ask for a no vote.
Senator Zinzinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would ask for an aye vote on this. Last year, we heard a very comprehensive transportation bill called House Bill 1242. And in that bill, which was sponsored by one of the sponsors of this particular bill, Senate Bill 1, there was a component for multimodal transportation. One of the key differences between that bill from last year and the bill this year is that there is no funding for multimodal transportation. When they say that there already is, what they're referring to is that in Senate Bill 267 last year, which was on the sustainability of rural Colorado, where we reclassified the hospital provider fee, part of that bill contained some funding for transportation. And out of that some funding for transportation, there was a very small provision that was used for transit. Taking up a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a bill and calling it multimodal is not adequate. This is a comprehensive statewide transportation bill, Senate Bill 1, that's supposed to apply to our entire state, that's asking us, our voters, to take on debt for the next 20 years. I think it's an appropriate amendment. It makes sure that we're thinking more broadly about transportation solutions in general. I think it's going to actually offer up longevity of certain roads that are crumbling that may not be on the Tier 1 list and are not going to be addressed by this bill. Because therefore people will be using other modes of transportation. It's what makes our transportation system work as a system, is that we have to start thinking more broadly about mobility issues. So this is a common sense amendment. This amendment was part of the key bill on transportation last year. It was very well regarded, and quite frankly, I think it actually helps the bill, Senate Bill 1, have a better chance at the ballot in November when we ask our voters to please take on debt to pay for roads and bridges and other transportation solutions, if we are including those solutions. I think you will have a better chance of actually encouraging the voters to get behind Senate Bill 1 if it has this component. We're going to need voters all across the state to say yes to this. We're going to need them to say yes to Senate Bill 1 if it passes. And I think this helps get more people to yes. Senate Bill 1 is only going to take care of about a third of our transportation needs. And if that's the case for the next 20 years, if we're going to be only taking care of a third of our transportation needs, I think people want to make sure that there's something in it for them as well. And multimodal solutions are important to people all across the state. I think it makes it a better bill. I think it improves its chances at the ballot when we ask the people if they would be willing to take on debt in order to finance our roads and bridges and transportation systems. So I very much encourage a yes vote on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The gentleman from Jefferson County, Senator Neville.
Yes, he did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, we heard about Senate Bill 1240, House Bill 1242 last year, and I'm very cognizant of House Bill 1242 because it failed in the Finance Committee last year. It was a $700 million tax increase on the backs of the people of the state of Colorado. It had more sugar plums in it than you could imagine in any kind of fairy tale. But it was great because it had something for everybody except for the people of the state of Colorado, because all it was going to do was to put us in one of the highest tax rate states when it comes to sales and use taxes in the country. A 1% increase, if I can remind you, we already sit as number 16 when it comes to sales tax in the state of Colorado. A 1% increase in the state of Colorado's sales tax between state and local puts us actually ahead of, guess what? New York State. Great. Not a smart idea. When it comes to multimodal and all the other issues that we talk about, Senate Bill 1 is a very balanced approach to dealing with what we feel are the most, and what the people in the state of Colorado feel are the most urgent needs in transportation. The most urgent needs. What we're talking about with this amendment is saying, well, wait a second, other people have needs. Doesn't matter about the urgent needs. What we're hearing from voters, what I hear from voters when I talk to voters is, fix our roads and bridges. There's 10% also for transit. RTD actually gets more funding currently than CDOT in the state of Colorado. Can you imagine that? And take a look at the percentage of vehicle miles and the percentage of people that use RTD on the Front Range. It's a very small percentage compared to the people that have to use our roads and bridges to even get to where they could ride on transit. So colleagues, I urge a no vote. We need to focus on what the issue and the problem is. There is funding available for transit, 10%. Everyone is in the queue, and when all is said and done, all this does is water things down and make things worse and increases the pain point, which has been the problem with this legislature in addressing fix our roads and bridges. I urge a no vote.
The other gentleman from Jefferson County, Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You are such a gentleman from El Paso County.
Thank you. And you as well, but not from El Paso County.
Roads and bridges, roads and bridges, roads and bridges. So first of all, I'd like to talk a little bit about how roads and bridges affect everyone, regardless if you're driving or taking a train or a bus, riding your bike, walking. So first of all, let me tell you that when my children walk to the neighborhood elementary school, which may or may not be called Kendrick Lakes Elementary School, and they may or may not be in the gallery at some point today. But when my kids walk to their local elementary school, they have to cross a road that has a crosswalk, and it's a stoplight crosswalk. And that is, they learned at an early age, when you're going to cross that road, it's busy enough that you definitely want to use the light. And when you want to cross that road safely, you go to the pole by the sidewalk, and you push the button. The light turns yellow and then red, and then the little lights telling you that it's safe to walk come on. The cars stop, and it's safe to cross. That's an example of multimodal. Kids getting to school safely. It's multimodal. They're using their feet, maybe riding their bikes, but they're crossing a road. And if we're talking about roads and bridges, they're crossing a road. They're using a crosswalk to cross a road. So one example there. And none of them are old enough to drive a car. We're too close for them to drive there anyways. So when we're talking about roads and bridges, yes, sometimes we're talking about kids crossing a road safely using a crosswalk. Also, when I commute to work by bike, so this morning, beautiful day to ride your bike to work, coming down Garrison, and they have nice bike lanes on Garrison that I'm riding down. And then when I get near 6th Avenue, there's a bridge that has recently been replaced. It was old, it was crumbling, and there are bike lanes on Garrison that go under the 6th Avenue bridge that was replaced. Yes, a bridge. And that bridge allows tens of thousands of cars to go over top, but also thousands of cars to go underneath, and also has sidewalks and bike lanes so that pedestrians and cyclists can safely go through that, what otherwise would be a very busy intersection and very unsafe. Roads and bridges and bike lanes and sidewalks. Then as I go a little bit further, I get near the W line, the light rail line. And we heard yesterday that sometimes the light rail, or the numbers aren't there for the light rail. For everyone who brings 6th Avenue in the morning or takes 6th Avenue home in the evening, and there's always traffic. That's one of the reasons I ride my bike a lot of times, is because with the traffic on 6th Avenue, oftentimes it's almost as fast for me to ride my bike from Lakewood as it is to sit in 6th Avenue in the traffic. But just remember that every single cyclist who is riding, every single person who is on the W line is one more person that's not sitting on 6th Avenue in traffic. And we heard that the trains are empty. I can tell you, because quite a bit of my commute is right next to the train tracks, that between 7 and 9 o'clock in the morning, between about 4 and 6 in the evening, those trains are full. And that's also the exact same time when 6th Avenue is full of cars. And every person who is on the train, every person who is riding their bike, they are not sitting on 6th Avenue. This is what we have in the year 2018, multimodal transportation. For some people, it makes sense to get in your car and drive, even if it's in the middle of rush hour. For some people, it makes more sense to get in their car, drive to the bus station, drive to the train station, get on the train. For some people, it makes sense on occasion to get on their bike and ride. Multimodal. Kids walking to school. People choosing a healthy alternative in getting to work by riding their bike. That's what multimodal is. That is why we need to make that commitment in this bill. If we are going to move forward with this bill, which is saying that we as a legislature are moving forward and we are going to make a further commitment that we are making sure that we are addressing all forms of transportation in a 21st century manner and not turning the clock back into the 20th or even the 19th century on forms of transportation. The year is 2018. Let's acknowledge that people in our state, people in my district, are demanding that we make a commitment to all forms of transportation. Please vote aye on L017.
Senator Cathalis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of L017, and there are two reasons that I'll share with you why I am supporting this amendment. First of all, my district, Senate District 14, which is most of the city of Fort Collins, people have said to me time and time again that yes, we must invest in our transportation infrastructure, but this investment must be a comprehensive approach which incorporates the concept of multimodal transportation. So I am representing the people of my district because that is what they have said to me. They want to someday have the opportunity to be able to get from Fort Collins to Denver in other ways other than driving. People want transportation choices. And let me share with you something that is relevant to that statement. The changing demographics in Colorado. The number of older adults in Colorado is increasing rapidly. Colorado's older adult population will experience an 88% increase from 2018 to 2050. By 2050, more than 1/4 of Colorado's population will be over 60 years of age. I submit to you that older people want to have transportation choices, and that is why I believe we should support this amendment, which would increase the investment to multimodal transportation as our way of addressing this problem. Thank you.
Any further discussion on Amendment L017? Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, members, I urge a vote a yes on this amendment. The reason is that in the metro area, we're not going to build ourselves with roads out of the congestion we're having and the growth we're having. And so we need the multimodal, we need the transit, we need BRT, we need rail, we need buses, we need that option on US 36. The buses are doing a great job and having increased ridership. That's the kind of thing we need to be doing. And my understanding is this 10% refers to 10% in another bill. Another member made this point, and it's approximately 1% goes into transit of this long-term debt that would be issued. But, and I would also note that where most of the money comes from for the HUTF comes from the metro area, and a lot of it's exported out to rural areas because there's more lane miles out there, and that's just the way it works, and people accept that. But in the metro area, we need the multimodal, and quite frankly, we need it in other areas too. I mean, there are good bus service in the ski areas, in rural areas. I understand there's a good bus service in Sterling, for instance, that we need to pay attention to and fund, because in the metro area, that's the only way we get people around this metro area as it continues to grow. In my neck of the woods, across the county line into Weld County, Frederick, Firestone, and Dacono are exploding in growth. And that's just going to congest. When I sold my parents' house in Greeley, the realtor told me that housing prices in Greeley were strong because people were willing to drive 60 miles to work. And we need to be thinking bigger than just roads. And someone that uses the bus system on US 36 with some regularity, it's great. I get a lot of work done on the bus, coming in, going out. And I don't, especially on snowy days, don't worry about having to drive in. So there's all sorts of benefits to transit. And there's also some benefits that in this bill that should help us with the first and last mile problem that we have, where people getting to the transit, how do they get there without driving a car, or with options at least, like bike lanes and bike paths. So I think this is a great amendment. It's the way we need to be going. I don't think we have a whole lot of choice with the growth we have, and you always hear about traffic related to growth, and we better be thinking differently. We better be thinking multimodal. We better think transit, or else we're going to have a huge problem in the metro area. It's going to be even worse than it is now. So I ask for a yes vote on this.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, colleagues, we're just hearing an interesting story. It's going to get worse if we actually build roads and bridges instead of focusing on a lot of other things that are not roads and bridges. We've already talked about the amount or the money that RTD gets within Metro Denver. We've already, at some point in 4.5 hours, I'm sure, mentioned the fact that the fare box revenues that RTD projected are running far below what they anticipated. Those are some facts. Facts are an unusual thing because sometimes they get in the way of, well, I won't use the term that my colleague from El Paso County that's in the chair used the other day, but they do get in that way. The point being here is that we have a focus of this bill to fix roads and bridges. We have a 10% variance in the bill to allow transit projects within the bill, because we realize that a number of projects, when it comes to transportation infrastructure, do require and make sense to have transit variables included at the time of construction. That's not in debate. What's in debate here is, what about pedestrians? What about this? What about that? CDOT is in a position where they take all that into consideration when they fund their projects. It's already there. And when it comes to RTD, RTD gets a ton of money, and I'd love to have more of a conversation. And if the good senator from Boulder County wants to talk about the actual numbers that RTD receives versus the actual amount of funding that CDOT receives, I look forward to that conversation.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, one thing I don't like about this body, sometimes somebody steps up to the mic and tries to say what you said and says it wrong. I was talking about a fraction of a fraction going to multimodal. There's 90%, my understanding, this is 10% of the 10%, so it's 1%. So most of this money is going to roads and bridges, and we support that. So please don't put words in my mouth. Please just go to the merits of the bill.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try and be quick. Just so that people understand what we're talking about here, this is a partial list of unfunded transit projects from across the state. These are the types of projects that I'm talking about here. We are talking about operating funding gap for increased demand for rural, elderly, and disabled on-demand mobility. We are talking about operating funding for expanded rural transit services. We are talking about bus replacements over the next 10 years. We're talking about Fort Collins Transit operating. We're talking about Colorado Springs operating. We're talking about the Front Range Regional Bus Service operating. We're talking about the Intermountain Transportation Planning Region operating. We're talking about the Intermountain Transportation Planning Region Capital. We're talking about the Mesa County Transit. We're talking about North I-25 BRT, and a variety of other projects. I think you get the point that these are actual transit authorities, transit projects that are scattered throughout the state that have significant needs, and all we are saying is please take a portion, a modest portion of the bill and focus it so that we can use it for these kinds of options. When you focus on transit, when you invest in transit, it helps the entire system go further. It helps your roads and bridges last longer. You actually impact things like congestion. So this is what our public wants. This is what the voters want, is in order to address those things. I would highly recommend that we adopt this amendment. I think it's really important to remember that when we say that there's 10% for transit in this bill, what we're talking about is actually 10% of what we did last year in 267. It's not a 10% of the overall package. So this amendment would help, I think, go a long way to making our entire system be better, and I would encourage an aye vote.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick. I just want to speak to the comment made regarding multimodal transportation and that fares are, the fares are not paying their way. In terms of Bustang, for example, which the Department of Transportation implemented over the last couple of years, ridership is up 52%. So I think, to me, that's one indication that people do want transportation choices, and I believe that that's an example of a system, multimodal, that is working and is what the people want. Ridership is up 52%. Thank you.
Any further discussion on Amendment L017? Seeing none, the motion before the Committee of the Whole is the adoption of Amendment L017. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The noes have it. L017 is lost. There is another amendment on the desk. L016, Mr. Carpenter, would you read Amendment L016?
Amendment L016, Senate Bill 1 by Senator Zenzinger, amend the Transportation Committee report.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I move L016 to Senate Bill 18001.
Proceed to the amendment, please. To the amendment, please.
To the amendment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And basically what I want to address in this particular amendment is one more piece that we talked at length about last year in terms of making it a more comprehensive bill. So one of the things, along with the multimodal that we just discussed and had great discussion on, is also allocating, instead of allocating all of the diverted state sales and use tax revenue to the State Highway Fund, 60% is diverted to the State Highway Fund, 40% is to the Highway Users Tax Fund for allocation to counties and municipalities, and the end result of that all is diverted revenue is allocated in accordance with the current existing statutory second stream transportation pardon me, second stream transportation funding formulas, so that the state gets 60%, which is what the majority of Senate Bill 1 would go to. Counties would get 22%, and municipalities would get 18% of the revenue. And I think the main reason that we're looking at this is, once again, and I'll kind of repeat what has been said at the well, and that is about a comprehensive bill. We're looking at making this such that people will support it. People will feel like they have some skin in the game. People will feel like they're, thank you very much. People feel like they will have some product as a result of voting for this bill. And I think about that in terms of coming from Aurora every day, and I pass through Aurora, which is Arapahoe County, and I come into Denver, which is in Denver County. So it's crossing local and county in terms of the streets, and that is where we're seeing a huge amount of the traffic way. Part of my transportation is along Parker Road, which is a state highway. So when we look at that in terms of at what point you provide money for a state highway, and then all of a sudden you switch gears and you're in a local area, then you're in a county, because we're particularly in the metro area is what I'm going to speak to. We have a crossover from state to county to locals, intertwining throughout all of the transportation of being able to make that trip from our communities to the through the state. And so I think making sure that we are not saying, well, we're going to take care of this road here, but then once it becomes a city or a local responsibility, we're not going to do anything with it. I think it does not make it a smooth transition, and I think what it does is it creates more of a havoc in terms of who's working where, and instead of it being comprehensive, our cities, our counties, and our state work together. They know what the priorities are. They know what the collaboration needs to be to get the job done. So with that, I move Senate Bill 16 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L016? Senator Zenzinger, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would encourage an aye vote on this for a couple of different reasons. One of the things that we are doing here is we are going to our voters, we're saying, can you please allow us to take on debt in order to finance our roads for the next 20 years? When we do that, we are selecting a series of projects off of the Tier 1 list that we're going to commit to doing. One of the things that we are not doing is raising the gas tax. And that is how the local counties and cities get their revenue for their roads. They get it through a portion of the HUTF. That portion of the HUTF, 60% of it comes to the state, 21% of it goes to the counties, and 19% of it goes to the locals. The benefit of this amendment is it says there are projects, there are road projects that are both of concern locally and statewide. For example, Wadsworth Boulevard. Wadsworth Boulevard runs through many of the communities in Jefferson County. Technically, that is a state road, but it runs through municipalities. It runs through Jefferson County. And there are certain sections that lead up to that road, interchanges, for example, that are on the locals to improve, despite the fact that it is a state highway. So, what this amendment does is it acknowledges that we have very significant transportation needs in all throughout Colorado, and it works in tandem, it works in partnership with those localities so that we can actually take a comprehensive approach to solving our transportation needs. It is the same transportation component that was in last year's House Bill 1242. We think it's a very logical addition that makes this bill go further, that does a better job of meeting the needs of all Colorado, and I would encourage an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on L016? Seeing none, the motion before the Committee of the Whole is adoption of L016. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no? No. The noes have it. L016 fails. We have another motion on the desk, another amendment on the desk, L028, I believe. Mr. Carpenter, would you read Amendment L028?
Amendment L028, Senate Bill 1 by Senator John, amendment from Bill page 12, line 5, strike improvements and substitute improvements including sound walls along interstate highways.
Senator John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L028.
L028 has been moved. Senator John to the amendment.
And I think I've been able to talk to a lot of you on both sides. And this happens throughout the entire state. So right now, CDOT does not have the authority to include sound walls in their Tier 1 projects. So all this is doing, and I've been working on this for 5 years, trying to get a sound wall finished in my district, and they just don't have the authority. So what this does on page 12, line 5, it will strike improvements and then substitute improvements including sound walls along interstate highways. I think every single one of us probably has one of these in our district. What this will do, even with the language, the feds still have a guideline that says CDOT can't spend the money on sound walls unless it is part of a Tier 1 project, which generally involve adding capacity, changing the alignment, interchange improvements, etc. Adding this language into Senate Bill 1 could provide CDOT, regions, and engineers some justification to go to the FHWA and make a case that this asset management funding is directed to sound walls. So this doesn't mean it's going to get done. It gives them the authority to go to the FHWA and ask for the project to be done. And that's the explanation, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L028? Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment actually doesn't do all that much except give CDOT permission to be able to seek these kinds of resources. Currently, the way that our system is set up, they don't have that permission ability. So it doesn't guarantee anything. It doesn't say that they have to be paid for in the bill. It doesn't say that they have to do it. It just opens up those lines of communication with the federal government so that we can consider these types of improvements in the future. And I would encourage an aye vote.
Further discussion on Amendment L028. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I view this as a friendly amendment and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on L028? Seeing none, the motion is on the adoption of L028. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and L028 is adopted. Are there further amendments on the desk? To the bill. Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you. Mr. Chair. It's been a robust discussion on Senate Bill 1. A lot of things that, concerns that have been brought forth, some solutions, and I'm sure moving forward there will be a lot more discussion on this bill. So I move Senate Bill 1 and ask for an aye vote on second reading.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I wanted to vote for this bill. I wanted to vote for a comprehensive plan for transportation, for a fix for Colorado. I wanted to possibly have some collaboration, possibly have a chance that some of the suggestions, some of the conversations we've heard in committees over the last 2 years would have an opportunity to be included or at least be considered. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that the best efforts that have been made in good faith to bring about a comprehensive opportunity for the citizens of Colorado to vote on has been shut down. I'm a real believer in process. I'm a believer in collaboration, in working together. And we didn't have a chance to do it in committee, didn't have a chance to do it on the floor, and I'm disappointed. Bipartisanship is what makes Colorado happen. So it grieves me to vote no on a comprehensive transportation proposal that is not comprehensive, that it is not for the long haul, that it's short term. When we look at $8 billion of a need and we are only offering a partial fix, and then when people in Colorado see that we didn't get the job done, but they think that they voted for something that was a promise to get things done. I'm a believer that Colorado is a great state. We are progressive. We are the leaders in so many different avenues. But this bill is not it. This bill does not get the job done. We've offered multiple amendments that I think are reasonable. Many are the same ones that were in 1242 last year, when had that bill come to the floor, probably would have passed. Many of those were opportunities for us to say, yes, the state, the county, and the locals can work together. This is an opportunity that we've missed, and we've missed it today. So with that, I'll be a no on Senate Bill 1. And I know I'm only one vote, but I represent my citizens in Aurora, and I represent the state of Colorado, not just my city, to say we've worked together to make a presentation to you, the voters. We've worked together, and we've not. So with that, I regret, but I will be a no on Senate Bill 1. Thank you.
Senator Garcia, or Senator Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I too, it kind of gives me great regret that I'm going to be a no vote on Senate Bill 1 as it is leaving this chamber. I think as we look at the fact, it was previously mentioned, the lack of bipartisan support on this, the lack of collaboration, the 10% diversion that would negatively impact areas in my district. And I think thinking about the amendment that was placed on this bill yesterday, which would allow the commission not to move forward on projects that are already being looked at and allocated for, I think is not the right approach for what we need in a transportation solution. I think we need a greater collaborative approach that looks at how do we continue to make these projects happen for the benefit of this great state. And so I'll be a no.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also will be a no. I just wanted to express really briefly, a couple of concerns I talked about the other day when I tried to get an amendment concerning the negative factor, which brings me to the point that the funding source, in my opinion, is inappropriate for highways and transportation because we have a funding source that we could have gone to and asked our voters to give us support in increasing that funding source. That's the HUTF funds, the gasoline taxes. Going to a sales tax specifically, it impacts my hometown of Colorado Springs. My hometown of Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs, where they have already raised their sale taxes and invested in transportation and transit in El Paso County. So for those reasons, I will frustratingly be a no.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to lay over Senate Bill 1 as amended till Tuesday, March 20th.
The motion before the body is to lay over Senate Bill 1 until Tuesday, March 20th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and it will lay over to Tuesday, March 20th. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to lay over the balance of second reading calendar until Tuesday, March 20th.
Motion is to lay over the balance of the calendar until Tuesday, March 20th. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it, and the balance of the calendar will lay over till Tuesday, March 20th. Mr. Majority Leader, once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion before the body is to rise and report. All in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The committee will rise and report.
Gigi Dennis just walked in. Really? Senate will come back to order. Senator Gardner. Senator Gardner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The Committee of the Whole has met, had a number of bills under consideration, and would the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs lead report is that on consideration of the following attached bills being the second reading thereof makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 1 is amended. Senate Bill 166. Senate Bill 47 laid over until 3/2018 and retaining their place on the calendar.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Motion before the body is the adoption of the report to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 1 is amended. Senate Bill 166, Senate Bill 47 laid over until 3/2018 and retaining their place on the calendar. That. Colleagues, would you help me in welcoming our colleague, former colleague, the Honorable Gigi Dennis. Consideration of House amendments to Senate bills. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 138?
Senate Bill 138 by Senators Gardner and Kerr and Representatives Gray and Liston concerning authorization for retail sellers of alcohol beverages for on-premise consumption to sell remaining inventory to another on-premises retail seller of alcohol beverages with whom there is common ownership when no longer licensed to sell alcohol beverages for on-premises consumption.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concurs with House amendments to Senate Bill 138.
Would you please explain such a thing?
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, out of the 65 members in the House, one of them, once in a while, has an okay idea. It happens, maybe once a session, and this will be the once that I'm asking you to give them a little consideration. But they added in the words revoked or the seller has lost legal possession of the licensed premises, and they basically added that language about 4 or 5 times in the bill, even though it's kind of messing with an otherwise perfect bill that we had coming out of the Senate. We're good with concurring.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, while I agree and concur in the motion to concur, I do not concur with my colleague, the gentleman from Jefferson County, that anyone ever had a good idea in the House after we left. But sometimes the cost of doing business here, of getting things through, is to just let them have their way and move on, and that's what we're going to do here so that we can get back to, perhaps next week, further discussion of Senate Bill 1. So we ask for your concurrence.
Is there any discussion? The motion is for the Senate to concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 138. Are there any no votes on concurrence? On concurrence, not on concession to the statements by the senator from Lakewood. With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I move the repassage of Senate Bill 138, and that is whether or not Kendrick Lakes Elementary might or might not be in the gallery now or in the very near future.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I also concur in the motion to concur, as well as whether or not Kendricks Lake Elementary is here, who it would be very welcome if they happen to be.
The motion, I think, is for the re-adoption of Senate Bill 138. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 138 is re-adopted. Co-sponsors. Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the appointments?
Members of the Securities Board for terms expiring July 1st, 2020. Stephen B. Price of Denver, Colorado, to serve as a member of the public at large. Appointed Kent Jeffrey Lund, JD, MBA, LLM of Denver, Colorado, to serve as an individual who is licensed by the state Supreme Court to practice law in the state of Colorado and who is conversant in the securities law. Appointed.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar, including members of the Securities Board.
Is there any discussion on the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar? Are there any no votes on the governor's appointments consent calendar? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, that motion is adopted. Following members are appointed to the Securities Board: Stephen B. Price, Kent Jeffrey Lund. Signing of bills.
The President has signed Senate Bill 5. The President has signed House Bill 1005, 1023, 1032, 1051, 1052, 1073, 1095, 1141, 1142, and 1183.
Delivered to the Governor.
To the Governor for signature on Wednesday, March 14, 2018 at 2:35 p.m. Senate Bill 5.
Committee appointments.
March 14th, 2018, Mr. Mike Maurer. Mr. Mike Maurer, please be advised that pursuant to Senate Rule 22C, I am appointing Senator Lucia Guzman and Senator Leroy Garcia to serve on the Select Committee on Energy and the Environment, effective immediately. Sincerely, Lucia Guzman, Senate Minority Leader.
Introduction of bills.
House Bill 1172 by Representative Young and Senator Lambert concerning money allocated from an appropriation from the Marijuana Tax Cash Fund to a designated managed service organization to implement its community action plan.
Appropriations. Announcements. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Quick announcement that the Select Committee on Energy and the Environment will be meeting immediately in room 350 something.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, in November, our General Assembly began to buckle under the weight of multiple sexual harassment complaints in both chambers towards members of both parties. I appreciate that we have acknowledged that the existing process is not ideal, and we have met to discuss and implement new procedures going forward. However, we should consider more than preventative measures. The process used in the past to adjudicate these issues is not sufficient for current investigations. The session started and we began the work of the General Assembly, all while knowing a process was taking place in the background to address the serious allegations that surfaced in the fall against a fellow senator. It's now March, and it has been reported that the senator from Hot Sulphur Springs has been validated, that the complaint has been validated. The integrity of the process, and therefore the building, now resides in action being taken. The current inaction is punishing. Throughout the country, reporting sexual harassment in the workplace has seemed unthinkable in even just the recent past. Women felt it was often too much to risk for what often concluded with the victim being dismissed or even blamed. We as a nation have moved to a better place where the accusers are given a voice. But for every victim that speaks out, you can be sure there are many more still afraid to do so. For what it'll mean for their career, their reputation, or their relationships. I love working here. It's an honor and a privilege to work hard on issues that we truly believe in. And it is hard. This work, this service to our constituents, challenges your beliefs, your ethics, and your foundational values. But it is our daily actions and our thoughtful deliberations that allow us to reflect upon our beliefs, to adhere to our ethics, and behave according to our values. And it is an honor to be the custodians of this chamber. No one but us, those allowed at this podium, set the tone and preserve the high honor of what it means to be a senator. No one but us. I love working here. But this was also the first place in my career that I experienced sexual harassment and pervasive sexism. My first session here was marked by so many comments that they have blended into an abstraction of what they were. My first session was not defined by a feeling of empowerment of being a young woman serving a great state, but instead a young woman who is daily judged and assessed on her appearance, willingness to date, marital status, haircut, sexual orientation, and vocal assessments of my butt, boobs, and legs. I never even thought to report these incidences because the building seemed to say, this is normal. This is how this works. Toughen up. Wear a different suit tomorrow that won't elicit a comment at the mic. The culture of the building made it acceptable to ask more questions about my love life than my bills. The culture of the building made it so I had to smile through inappropriate comments in order to get a vote count. The culture of the building made it so I had to used to being looked up and down as I testified. The culture of the building meant that a hug that lingered too long and too close was part of working on an amendment. I don't need a hug, I need your vote. There are plenty, the large majority, in fact, of good men and women in this building, with whom I would go into the trenches with. Men and women whose opinions I value and whose work I respect. I love working here. This chamber is filled with men and women who I know sacrifice being with their loved ones in order to serve in public office. We are not all guilty of sexual harassment, far from it. But this only becomes a commentary on all of us if we stay silent and do nothing. Continued inaction, as if nothing has happened, does not give confidence to others to come forward. This issue is important to the people of Colorado, and it is important to the young interns and aides that we encourage to be part of their government. They deserve to feel safe in their workspace, and they deserve a government that has zero tolerance for any form of harassment. From the federal government all the way down to city governments, we've seen appropriate and diverse actions that have been taken to publicly address the issue. From elected officials losing their leadership positions, for others resigning their office altogether. These actions are not simply to punish the accuser, but are meant to serve as a beacon of hope to victims and non-victims alike that their workplace has taken an active role in addressing the issue. I love working here. Let us make sure that we, as leaders and as senators, ensure that others can love working here as well. For this reason, we, the members of the Senate Democratic Caucus, ask that the Senate resolution we prepared and submitted for introduction on February 13th, entitled Concerning the Expulsion of the Senator from Northwestern Colorado for Sexual Harassment of a Legislative Employee, be promptly introduced and brought to the floor of the Senate for debate. Colleagues, Mr. President, thank you for your time.
Senator John.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I have an announcement to make. As we all know, March is Women's History Month, and we do have a celebration. The National Foundation for Women Legislators is celebrating Women in Public Office Day, and we have a great event tomorrow morning down on the West Foyer, first floor in the Capitol. We would like to invite everyone to come. We'll have a couple of speakers, and we're also going to serve cake. So you all can come down and join us on the first floor at the foyer for Women in Public Office Day. Thank you.
Senator Martinez-Humanek.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'd like to just remind everyone that the Colorado Charitable Bingo Association is having their reception this evening. It will be at the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association building, or CADA, at 290 East Spear Boulevard. And it will be from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., and they would really like to see you come if you can.
Senator Todd. And Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we are excited to announce that today is Aurora Day at the Capitol. We have a group of folks in the Senate joining us, and we have people in the House as well. And so we are thrilled to have Aurora residents with us today. We are the third largest city in the state, and we are very proud of the way that our city is growing and expanding and have so many things to be proud of.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. And so for my friends and my neighbors from Aurora, welcome to the state capitol. I am so sorry that you had to listen to my colleague share her story of what it's like to be a woman and to serve under the state capitol. It brought tears to my eyes because today was to be a day of celebration because I love Aurora. So I'm not going to get distracted, but can tell you that my heart breaks for my colleague. And it's hard for me to kind of shift from being happy and then being sad at the same time. But Aurora is a great place to live. It's a great place to work. And what we have that many other communities might not have is that we have lots of property. You know, Aurora is growing, so there's lots of opportunity for economic development. We're growing. We have the Gaylord project that's coming up. We have light rail that now extends from I-25, 225, all the way to the airport. There's a lot of good things happening in Aurora. And what makes Aurora great is the citizens. We're a very diverse community. In many of the schools, many different languages are spoken in our schools, and we get along because we understand the importance and the richness of diversity. So thank you for your amazing support throughout the year. We will have lunch with you this afternoon, so we have lunch up on the 3rd floor, so please join us. But thank you for hanging out with us today. And I'm so sorry that you had to listen to that experience about sexual harassment. It should not be that way. We all deserve to be in a workplace where someone's not degraded and demeaned based on what they're wearing. That's absolutely just disgusting. But once again, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I also want to extend the warmest of welcomes to my constituents from Aurora. I am so proud to represent Aurora in the State Senate. A part of the district, the Senate district, which I now represent, that was not in the House district that I represented for many years before. But as I moved from the House to the Senate and my district that I represent included for the first time part of Aurora, I, during the campaign, made it my business to get to know Aurora. And what a pleasure that was. What a great community that is. How proud am I to be able to represent part of Aurora. How heartily have the people of Aurora welcomed me to and taken me into their midst. And I am so proud to be representing Aurora as well as the other cities within the south of Denver, surrounding Denver, that I represent. This has been a marvelous experience, and I have only the people of Aurora to thank for this honor and this privilege and this pleasure of getting to know Aurora better. So thank you, people of Aurora. Thank you for being here.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, would like to come down and thank everybody for organizing Aurora Day at the Capitol. It's one of my favorite days. My district is the northern part of Aurora, north of Colfax, and it has boomed the past 10 years that I've represented the area. I remember knocking on doors back there in 2008, when the beginning of the Great Recession, and there were a lot of vacant houses, but now those houses are full and being gentrified and selling for 4 and 5 times what they were 10 years ago, and a lot of it is by the economic driver of the Anschutz Medical Center and campus that is huge for not just my district in Aurora, but for the state of Colorado. Aurora is blessed to also have E470, which allows people to sit in less traffic than other parts of the Front Range, and I use it quite a bit, as my E470 toll bill that comes once a month lets me know. But Aurora has a bright future ahead of it, and I'm excited to be a part of it in a small way. I also enjoy looking at the Gaylord Rocky Mountain project as it rises off there in the plains. I actually voted for that piece of legislation in the House. I think it was my freshman year, maybe. But when I look at it, I think about my children. My 4 children all go to 27J schools, and they have an agreement with 27J, Gaylord does, that Gaylord will host all of the proms for all of the high schools going forward. So all of my children, when they go to prom, hopefully go to prom, will be out at Gaylord Rocky Mountain. So thanks again, everybody from Aurora, for coming down to the Capitol, and enjoy your day.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I have two announcements, but before I share those announcements quickly, I just want to, even though I'm not from Aurora, I just might as well add my 2 cents. Thank you, Aurora. My announcements are as follows. Tomorrow, you will have plenty of choices where to spend your time, 7:30 to 9 a.m. There is a legislative meet and greet outside the old Supreme Court chambers, Clubhouse, Colorado. This will be an opportunity for a gathering with Clubhouse members, consumers, and staff colleagues to learn about the mission of Clubhouse, Colorado. I know in my neck of the woods we have Spirit Crossing Clubhouse, and in Greeley there is the Frontier House. And this is a great resource for folks who are looking for employment, who are dealing with cognitive issues, behavioral health issues. And so I encourage you to join us tomorrow, 7:30 to 9, to meet some of the folks from the Clubhouse International, Clubhouse Colorado movement. The second announcement that I wish to share is tomorrow is Colorado Hemophilia Awareness Day at the Capitol. And at the same time, tomorrow morning, 7:30 to 9, outside of House Committee Room 112, there will be a gathering of folks, some breakfast, to learn more about bleeding disorders and learning more about hemophilia. So perhaps you can spare some time and visit with these two groups. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. In the spirit of what Senator Kafalis was just saying, for those of us who represent Aurora, those of us who are from Aurora, those of us who've heard of Aurora, let's welcome all those that are from Aurora here today. Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues in Finance, Senate Finance will begin at 5 minutes to the hour promptly. See you there.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. The Colorado Healthcare Association is hosting a reception this evening from 5 to 7, and it's at the Warwick Hotel. You're all encouraged to attend. Thank you.
Mr. Majority Leader. Oh, actually, message from the House, and then we can, I know.
The House has postponed indefinitely Senate Bill 128. The bill is returned herewith.
Okay. Now, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move the Senate adjourn until 9 a.m. Friday, March 16th, 2018.
Motion is for the Senate to adjourn until 9 a.m. Friday, March 16th. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and we will stand in adjournment.